In the past few decades, we have seen a tremendous evolution of video games across a variety of different genres. Some explore futuristic worlds far beyond our own reality, while some others might dive into a point of time in history that we may not have lived in, but they provide us with a virtual experience in that era, despite how accurate or inaccurate the representation of it really is. Or games that don't really go in any particular direction at all. Anyway, I have always been fond of games or pieces of media that reflect something larger. Themes, or perhaps even a set of ideologies I can ponder deeply about and even closely relate to in the very own reality that I live in. And in my opinion, no game achieves this better than Key's visual novel, Clannad. First of all, what even is a visual novel, you ask? The answer of that is quite straightforward. The name of the genre already gives most of it away. It is a novel that incorporates visuals. However, musical soundtracks, sound effects, and voice acting are also core features of this genre. Having established this, visual novels often come in a narrative style form that is driven by literature, as well as interactive features that facilitate a more choose-your-own-adventure style of gameplay. Clannad, which launched originally in the form of a traditional visual novel as described previously, has been adapted into several other forms of media, such as an anime series, a film, a manga series, and even spin-off games. The story follows Yu, who plays as the main character, Okazaki Tomoya, a high school student in Japan who starts off living a rather monotonous life. Throughout the course of the game, Tomoya, or Yu, makes many encounters with people during his very last year of high school, represented as different routes in the game, including 5 girls whose individual problems he tries to help resolve, one of which, Nagisa, becomes the love of his life, ultimately enriching his initial monotone and directionless life. As the descriptions and mechanics of a visual novel suggest, Clannad is strongly driven by storytelling and dialogue, as well as the decisions that you are able to make as the player to unlock multiple possible endings through interactive options, which applies to every character route. Upon completing a character's scenario, they also receive an orb of light that symbolizes the discovery of happiness, as the individual problem has been resolved. However, there is a true canonical ending that can only be unlocked after every single light orb has been obtained, titled Clannad Afterstory. This therefore requires the player to complete and resolve the specific character's scenario in every single route, as they play a pivotal role in establishing the setting of the Afterstory sequel. An interesting aspect that is definitely worth discussing is how accurate the portrayal of everyday life is in Clannad when compared to that of our own. Rather than focusing on fantasies and superpowers, Clannad appreciates the subtle details that surround our simple yet also complicated lives. This explains why the visual novel's plot doesn't unfold in a linear fashion, but instead it expands outwards, and I see this as a clear reflection of our own world. Just like Tomoya in Clannad, we meet and encounter different people, and each of them plays a unique role in our life, despite how major or minor this role may be. and this is a key emphasis of the visual novel. Clannad is crafted carefully this way, and I believe this justifies why we have to complete every single character's route to unlock the true ending of Afterstory. At the end of the day, I see this as an embodiment of the idea that yes, the end result is important, but the many obstacles and joys we encounter along the way are just as, or if not, more important. Now, the themes that Clannad touch on are very reflective of the raw form that the game presents itself in. It is a slice of life style game, focusing on the joys, struggles, and even complexities of everyday life. This is particularly encapsulated by a unique yet often overlooked aspect of the game: the idea of having a constant insight into Tomoya's inner thoughts and feelings, both within and outside dialogue. Being such a story-driven game, I believe this feature is to further the player's understanding of Tomoya, and therefore of others, not only building a stronger sense of empathy for the challenges and misfortunes that befall on others, but also establishing a better understanding of just how colourful and complex our everyday civilian lives can really be. In addition, the simplistic yet simultaneously complex feature of casual interactive everyday dialogue between you and others reinforces the notion that relationships and bonds we construct in our own reality are very much dependent on the choices and decisions we make in life, despite how trivial a conversation or two may seem on the surface. The changing expressions of characters you interact with in the game due to your choice of dialogue options, as well as their recognizable changes in tone through voice acting, could very much play with our self-consciousness for what we choose to say to one another and its consequential impacts. This therefore puts the player's morality onto the bigger picture, as the game does occasionally challenge you with some difficult decisions to make, and almost every choice has an immediate effect on the course that the story takes. In doing so, Clannad also poses an important question to humanity. To what extent do the things we say and do really dictate our relationships with others in the distant future? Yes, the game has checkpoints that you can go back to if you feel like the decision that you previously made was not ideal, which unfortunately is not an option in real life and completely contradicts the idea we're currently discussing. It still left me pondering about the potentially significant consequences of how I interact with and hence present myself in front of others. Of course, I cannot finish this video without talking about the central themes of Clannad: the importance of family and growing up. The word Clannad itself actually means family in Gaelic or Old Irish. While the first half of the Clannad visual novel brings to light Tomoya's high school life and his encounters with others, most importantly, Nagisa, Clannad Afterstory, the sequel unlocked by obtaining all the light orbs, explores something deeply connected to a core part of our lives: establishing a family. Most romance stories often conclude with the main characters successfully forming a romantic relationship, whereas Clannad Afterstory does something entirely unconventional. It chooses to explore life in its full continuity, as Tomoya begins to form a growing family with Nagisa after establishing their relationship. On a side note, in the second half of the visual novel, although not noticed by many, there is also a clear difference in the interactive dialogue options provided to you, or Tomoya, as they appear to be much more mature and more challenging actually compared to the prequel. This really comes to show the fluidity or swift nature of time that Clannad seeks to portray. as well as the gradual growth and change that we all experience upon not only meeting others in life, but also when we reach the years of adulthood. Now, although starting a family is something I am still very unfamiliar with, it has often been portrayed as a joyful and exuberant experience. The Clannad Afterstory sequel, however, additionally presents the struggles and hardships that come with this seemingly colourful time in life. In this section of the game, the insight we have of Tomoya's character is further deepened, as his inner feelings and thoughts gradually take up a larger proportion of the game, and we see his mentality change from a teenager to an adult. This comes to show just how complex and sophisticated the years of adulthood can really be, as the game speaks to the hearts of the audience by presenting the players with a period of time that everyone can really relate to. It is not until the climax of the game when Nagisa gives birth and, as a result, tragically passes away, that the players are confronted with a truth that cannot be ignored, and that is death. In doing so, Clannad not only seeks to remind us of our own fragility and mortality, but also the inevitability of loss that we experience as a member of a family. Having said that, although Clannad is a fictitious piece of work, the values and issues it explores hauntingly parallels with that of our own world and reality. It confronts us with a disturbing yet overlooked fact of that loss is a part of love and establishing a family and life, and that we are not in control of our own or each other's eventual demise. Tomoya's life following this tragedy in the visual novel is depicted to be dark and empty through his thoughts and feelings, and this poses a confronting question to us as the players of the game. Is life and love really worth pursuing, even if we know the eventual outcome that will befall on us and on those dearest to us? On a side note, the accompanying music of the Clannad visual novel was what really allowed itself to portray a beautiful yet tragic story. The emphasis on soft acoustic sounds such as piano and strings brought the game to life in its most compelling moments. Composers Maeda Jun, Orito Shinji, and Togoshi Magome specifically put their focus on the central themes of Clannad, such as family and nostalgia, bringing together pieces of art that truly reflected the beauty and genuineness of the story. Now, looking back, when I first fell in love with this game, it was mostly because of its amazing ability to share a heartfelt story and also the intricate musical compositions to accompany the visual novel's most beautiful moments. However, now that I have played the game several times, not as a teenager but as an adult, I can only appreciate this piece of media even more for how genuinely it seeks to portray the joys and struggles of adulthood life, and really just how the things that seem most trivial in life, such as a thing or two we say to another, actually turn out to be the most important. Clannad reflects our reality in a very confronting way, as it presents us with the tragedies that are unavoidable yet must be acknowledged in life, such as the loss of a dear family member. It is almost scary how relevant the ideas portrayed in Clannad are to our own world. And having thought about this piece of media for months and months, I believe at the heart of this visual novel lies a question of ethics. Is it better to love and consequentially face loss, or to simply not love at all?